In this episode, I had a conversation with Ollie Patrick, who is a physiologist and wellbeing expert. Ollie has spent his entire career in this field. He's worked at Nuffield Health. He's created an entire department on physiology there. Ollie has performed so many medical assessments. And for me, it was really important to understand what that's about, what goes into that, whether or not this is accessible to general public and whether we can do any of this for ourselves at home. We talked about so many different wellbeing exercises that you can do yourself to improve your general well-being. We talked about the barriers to wellness and why people are not choosing to take care of themselves. We talked about things like aging, about stress, about energy, and all the things that you can be doing to either monitor that or to improve your overall wellness. I'm so excited for you to hear this episode. I know that you're going to get so much from it. Ollie Patrick, welcome. So you are a physiologist and a wellbeing expert. So how would you define that?
I think both those terms are open to mass misinterpretation and whatever interpretation you want. So physiology is really the science of how we work. It's normally divided into clinical physiology, which is people working in hospitals and chronic care, managing respiratory or cardiovascular conditions. Well, that's not me. Or there's sort of performance physiology, where you are trying to work alongside maybe strength and conditioning teams in measuring human outputs like VO2 max, force, power, sweat markers to enable optimized athletic or sports performance. That's not me either. So, all the cool kids, I'm neither of them. Okay. So I actually went into health and wellbeing physiology, which was really health assessments and health screening, where I was trying to work in multidisciplinary medical teams to try and work out who was well and who was not well. Right. And where it wasn't clear, could we look to improve their physiology? So really my background was in working in medical health screening. So the annual health check people would get, I'd be part of a nurse, doctor and physiology team for that. And then what I realized was there was an aching well-being space in that, because most people attending originally started off with the idea, just check I haven't got a disease. Yeah. Once that had been excluded, which could be an entire separate podcast because it's not easy to exclude. But once that had been theoretically excluded, they were told they were well, but they were left with that wellness space, which was, well, it's great that I'm not unwell, but I'm knackered. It's great that I'm not unwell, but I'm really brain foggy. It's great that I'm not unwell, but I can't lose weight, or my hair isn't as thick as I'd like it, or I've got a recurrent immune challenge, or my knees are sore and I can't run. And what you end up with is there's an awful lot of distress to the human machine, which doesn't classify as medical or meet a treatment threshold. Okay. And it's sort of the preserve of the wellness community. And my life has been trying to work out why someone would be less than optimally functioning from a biological measurement point of view. And then how would we leverage mostly lifestyle to improve the way they feel? And that means I'm a physiologist and wellbeing consultant, because I try and blur those worlds together.
Okay. So how did you get into that? Like, how did that happen?
So it started by pursuing, actually I was going to go and work at the Sydney Olympics, and I needed a job just to fill the time before I got out there and got my big wide-rimmed hat and Factor 200 on. So I got a job as a sort of an intern doing almost cardiac physiology, so running health screening in a medical clinic, and then came back from Sydney, went back into that clinic and was involved in delivering so many health assessments that, I realized that the product itself wasn't very good. Had a really sort of innovative European medical director come in and say, well, what should we do? And she was like, could you measure this? And we're like, oh, if you let us measure that, we'll measure that. And could you do this? And really, we removed the nurse and became an enhanced tester, would have been the role. And then over a sort of iterative period of years of doing thousands of health assessments, gradually increased the scope of practice into spaces where there was no scope of practice. So we brought heart rate variability in, but who's a heart rate variability professional, right? It's a sort of major democratized parameter. It's not a medical parameter. It's not always a performance parameter. So who would own it? And we brought an antioxidant measurement in, but who would measure whether you've got enough antioxidants? It's not a medical parameter. It's not performance. Yeah. So we started to grab these parameters from the world of either performance sport or other clinics and embed them into a commercial health assessment model. And then at the point that that organization sort of was growing, we were acquired by Nuffield, and Nuffield said, I'd sort of become team lead then, had 10 physiologists across multiple sites. And it was like, well, can you retrofit this new testing with the knowledge behind it to some kind of governable qualification. So that ended up me writing out the level 7 diploma in health and wellbeing physiology, which is sort of master's equivalent.
Yeah.
And this was 2005, 2006, when Nuffield very intelligently repositioned itself as a wellbeing organization, acquired gym groups and went down that direction. And I was fortunate to that point then become the head of physiology and nutrition at Nuffield.
Wow.
And really created, in truth, a qualification to enable a profession to fill a real consumer gap. And that was a really wonderful period of many different collaborative medical health professionals, brand people, but there was no space. So I was part of the team that made that space.
Wow, that's fantastic. So in terms of the health assessment, obviously you were doing health assessments prior to Nuffield and then throughout that time and then afterwards as well. So obviously you did set up a company that was then doing that more on an elite level maybe, or a higher sort of scale. I'm not sure how you would say that, but obviously people paid quite a lot of money to do them.
They did.
Is there a difference then between them all, or is there like a similarity? Did you change obviously you've changed and you've developed things, but is there like a general when it comes to a health assessment? How would you describe that?
Yeah, there's your sort of standard high street health assessment is saying, look, there are some pretty well-established parameters that have a correlation with increased risk of disease. So, as we sit here now, we both have circulating levels of blood lipids, think cholesterol, circulating levels of blood glucose. We have a blood pressure. We are, passing in our urine, all sorts of interesting things that tell me whether my kidneys might be working. Or so there's a sort of look under the bonnet that makes sense, because not everything that we would determine as illness or pathology is easily discernible through symptoms. So the first principle of a health assessment is there something I can test that might reveal early signs of my body not working before I might notice it in a very treatable fashion? And they're the sort of tests that actually, because there's so much evidence for those tests, you could get them through national health screening programs, and they're normally available at different ages and stages, again, across different biological sexes. But people want them, with a bit more, I suppose, delivered in a slightly more aesthetic environment and curated in a slightly more, professional environment. Often, the tests you get in a traditional annual health assessment, you could probably compile through NHS testing, but just not in such a succinct package. What we had was a sense there's still an awful lot of blind spots to that product. And the great horror of a health assessment is, imagine I do one on you and go, Katie, you're completely well. Yeah. And of course, I give you then a false impression of, I know no such thing, right? And it was several times when I had someone do a health assessment where we checked the ECG for their heart and their blood pressure and their cholesterol. And we said, oh, fantastic results, Mr. Jones. And then, next year comes around and, oh no, he died of a heart attack.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, bollocks, how?
Gone wrong.
How?
What happened?
Yeah. And you're like, well, actually, we tested the best we could test, but that didn't actually fully answer the question. And, and this person, we checked them for testicular cancer and prostate cancer, great, but they got pancreatic cancer. Crap. And this person came in and we told them they're well, and then they developed, vascular dementia. Crap. And what you realize is, without making this the most morose podcast that anyone's ever listened to, there's 155,000 plus recognized diseases. You can't screen for all of them. Okay. So which ones are you inferring you've looked at, but you haven't? And two things happened. When we basically were in sort of peak Nuffield days, we were approached by a big conglomerate company to build a new ultimate health assessment for an incoming chairman. Yeah. And at this point, the functional medicine movement was becoming a bit more recognized. So functional medicine isn't about measuring whether I've got a recognized disease pathway or not. It's saying, actually, can I measure how you function and work out if you function poorly, whether that might make you more at risk of becoming unwell? For example, a gut microbiome test, which is quite popularized now. So taking a stool test, looking at all the bacteria in your stool, wouldn't be necessarily a diagnostic pathology test. I'm not looking for bowel cancer or stomach ulcers. I'm going, we believe that there should be lots of bacteria of lots of different colonies to optimize how your body manages inflammation, immunity, for example. Yeah. So you'd run that test not to look for disease, but to look at whether you could reduce risk of disease by making that system work better. So there's lots of ifs and buts in there. But around the time of making this new health assessment, functional diagnostics have become a bit more accessible from American labs importing to the UK. And we said, we don't know what this individual really needs until we know this individual. So we created a health assessment format where we would do a health assessment to then build you a proper health assessment a month later. And that would include a whole range of functional diagnostics like gut health, DNA analysis, hormone mapping, wearable technology that said, okay, we're really going to work out what good health means to you, not my version of good health, but yours. And we're going to take those original set of biomarkers to work out what we need to dig deeper into or what we can leave for another year. And then at the end of that assessment, when we've done this second day a month later, we won't just let you go. Now we'll look after you. And we'll go, right, this determined that you needed to eat 2 more fibrous portions a day. So let's help you with the behavior of that. This determined there's a mole that's just changing shape. So we want to do another follow-up for that in 3 months' time and check that it hasn't moved from looking like Brazil to looking like the whole sort of, South American continent. So your 2 key things were we hyper-personalized the diagnostic process by making it a 2-tiered event. And then we created a tail that meant we never left you. We iterated and retested and supported and nurtured over the course of the following 12 months. And that product led us, myself and 2 senior figures from Nuffield to then set up a new business that delivered at that point the world's most expensive health assessment.
Yeah.
But we would have said the world's best health assessment. It just happened to be the most expensive.
And when it's the most expensive, so you're saying about, 150,000 ailments, did you say, like that we can have?
Plus, yeah.
How many were you able to test then for the most expensive?
Yeah, still not all of them. You basically, then you get into the idea of, well, how many of them come from a centralized cause? So you can look at things that people believe are either causative of most disease or certainly correlatory. And that word would be inflammation. So you say, look, inflammation is this sort of unwanted latent immune response that protects us in acute bursts. So I want an inflammatory reaction to a wasp sting, and I want an inflammatory reaction to a twisted ankle, and I want an inflammatory reaction to a virus, but I don't want chronic, as in all the time, low level inflammation. That's an environment in which most diseases can catch hold and spread. So you had a chance of that. You're also then going, well, actually, we can also look at where you've got higher heritable risk. So your mum and dad had this particular slightly odd condition. We can check for that. And your DNA tells us that you are really bad at clearing estrogens, for example, a bit like the BRCA gene. So we can really double down on ovarian screening or breast screening or, those sort of affiliate conditions. You will never close that loop to say, no matter which assessment, no, you can't. And that was really tough to be aware of, that even with all the testing in the world, 2 things, there's blind spots. And secondly, physiology is a shifting sand. So how soon again do I test again?
Yeah.
Right? And what you really get invested in when you do that type of assessment is how critical it is that you take detail of the individual's lifestyle. Right? Because let's imagine we had 5,000-6,000 data points. So everything from your stool to your saliva to your blood to your urine to your imaging MRI, your CT image, you've got all this imagery. What's the biggest thing that will tell you how those results are going to look? It's going to be what was written on the questionnaire when that person walked in. Do they move? Do they nourish? Do they rest? Are they connected? Do they like themselves? And ultimately, so often we've confused disease and pathology as something that sort of happens incidentally to us, rather than really being, in many cases, and not all, the ripple effect of our lifestyle negatively or positively affecting our physiology aggregated over time.
Yeah.
And I say that, that seems to be what most ailments are, is your lifestyle jarring with your physiology and it then sending a symptom of distress, which is misappropriated as a condition. It's not a condition. It was a flare in the sky to say, I don't like the fact you sleep 5 hours a night. I don't like the fact you eat no fiber. I don't like the fact that you are choosing to be socially isolated when you are naturally, an extroverted personality type. I don't like these things. And I'll tell you that through the skin flaring. I'll tell you that through your tummy, being difficult to have consistent bowel movements. I'll tell you that through low brain, state. But we've decided those things were conditions, and we managed that symptom by medicating that symptom, when all it was the canary in the mine trying to tell you that the conditions have changed.
And can we just go back to those things that you just said there? So there was movement, nutrition, connection.
Connection. I would say rest. So rest, recovery, sleep, all sort of brackets. And rest, recovery, sleep would encompass stress management, sleep, and really behaviors that restore energy. So it's quite a big bracket that's not that well understood. And probably the last one would be perception. So the perceptive lens through which I view the world. So, everything from optimism to pessimism to grit, resilience, psychological traits that would directly influence my physiology, of which there are many. But those are the lenses that we are encountering the world through. I'm encountering today through quality or absence of movement, quality or absence of nourishment, quality or absence of rest, quality or absence of connection, and quality or absence of really nourishing thoughts versus punishing thoughts. And the great danger is the wellness industry told us those are separate sectors. They're not. They're just one lens, one vista. And that lens will determine what your cells adapt to, and what your cells adapt to will determine what's going to show up on an expensive health assessment.
And so if someone couldn't then pay for an expensive health assessment, would you say that these are the places that they could start then and just work on those and focus on those? So focusing on their sleep and recovery and making sure that they're moving, even if it was just moving and going for a walk, I want to make it as accessible as possible for people. And,
of course.
And obviously a lot of people, or maybe the general public, can't always go and get an expensive, assessment, or might not be able to, use a wearable, or just can't put that money into that, so it's just
totally
thinking about how it can help people. Where do they begin? So if they haven't got the extra funds, it is those sort of pillars that you've just spoken about that's going to have an impact and improve their life.
Enormously. I'd say start there and finish there, Katie. I really would, because let's imagine, and people seem to think that behaviors are about how you look, and if I eat well and nourish well, I'll look better in the mirror. This is the cellular structure of you, right? So let's take two people, identical twins, both saving up to go for their annual health assessment, one of whom gets 10,000 steps or steps equivalent, the other one gets 2,000. That same person does the 150 minutes of cardio that governments recommend. The other one does 8. The first one does 2 resistance training sessions a week. The other one does none. The other one does 2 mobility sessions. I know it sounds like a full-time job, but that's ultimately our bodies weren't designed for anything other than movement. So when we neglect it. So we've got one person who's basically classified as sedentary, one person meeting government guidelines. When we run their bloods, what do we think that we're going to see? We're going to see marked different levels of cholesterol, marked different levels of glucose, marked different levels of enzymes involved in regulating key biological processes, marked different levels of inflammation. When we measure their blood pressure, what we're going to see? Marked different levels of blood pressure. When we measure their sleep, what we're going to see? Marked different. But you tell me which test isn't going to be better in Twin A, right? So why go to an assessment to find out what you already knew, which is you are not looking after yourself, unless you need that kick in the ass, and people do. You need that visual representation. But what you do isn't separate to what's going to get tested when you go to the doctors. They're going to test what you do, but they're going to put a Latin name on it and make you believe it's something that is outside of your control because it came through your genetics. There's a genetic component to everything, but the majority component seems to be lifestyle. So when someone says, what should I do? I'd say 2 things. You've got to optimize your lifestyle within your health literacy, what you understand, and your socioeconomic status, what you can afford to do, and time being the greatest cost, of course. Someone who's got 5 kids, single parent, working at evening jobs isn't going to be able to hit those government guidelines for movement. So there's caveats, but we shouldn't start with the caveats because everyone wants to go, this is my reason why I can't. But that individual, their duty is to get of those behaviors they can do as effective as they can. And that will manifest in their results. The second thing is the biggest health assessment is observation of change. Right? So you can go and have the top end, £40,000 health assessment. But what's really critical is my mole used to look like this, now it looks like that. I used to pee this number of times, now I pee that number of times. I used to have this sex drive, and I've got that sex drive. My hair used to be this thick, now it's this thin. And that observation of change, so often people put it down to it's because I'm stressed, I'm run down, I'm aging. That's where we fall foul of saying, let someone else tell you the reason for the change. And that's accessing a GP. Standard physician to go, this behavior or thing has changed, yet my job's the same, my kids are the same, my partner's the same. So if we experience physiological or anatomical change that doesn't correlate with a lifestyle change, then I would like a doctor to explain why that is, rather than me to go onto Google and reassure myself it's of no interest. It may be of very little interest, but it's worth tracking.
Yeah.
So before you conceive spending all the money on the health assessment, if you're leading a lifestyle that has no movement, no nourishment, no rest, no connection, no self-care, you're just going to measure that. So you're going to waste your money. And again, you might find the odd bit here and there, but that's mostly what you're going to measure. And if you want to save on that money, observe yourself changing over time. And when that doesn't track against the quality of your lifestyle, then use the existing health infrastructure, general practitioner, to go, this has changed. Can you explain why and reassure me that's of nothing of consequence?
Yeah, okay. In terms of then, I know you said that people maybe can make up excuses, but in your experience, what is the sort of barrier for people? Why do people know the information that, you know, eating healthy, not choosing fast food, things like that, movement? Why do you think people still choose to do the things that are not good for them?
I suppose, because we are designed to seek the path of least resistance. That's in our nature. We just never imagined that path of least resistance would be so clear and obvious, and in almost every case, a worse option for the cells of my body. We have three phrases that we use, two of which are relevant. We call our environment obesogenic, which means I'm likely to gain weight because everything that I'll encounter today will try and make my life easier. 10 years ago, if we wanted this conversation, both of us would have traveled to a similar location, right? 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And that would have meant I went to the train station, you went to the train station, we carried our bags with our podcasting kit, and we got ourselves there. We lugged it and we got there. And when we got there, we probably wouldn't have had 2,000 different options for food. We might have had to make a sandwich or put an apple in a bag or, bring a snack. But we certainly wouldn't have been able to eat food that 90% of my body doesn't recognize, this ultra-processed food dilemma. Yeah. So we see this creating a calorie surplus, weight gains, but that's also a nourishment problem. We've got nearly 70% of UK calories coming from ultra-processed food, which again, by its very nature, I couldn't make in my kitchen. It's got more than 5 ingredients, but it doesn't have the nutrients my body needs just to work. So why would I choose that food over making something? Because it's pleasure, right? And we have chosen pleasure as our path. It's pleasurable. Hedonism, which is, again, hardwired in. I was last weekend I was with TJ Power, the neuroscientist, who's written a really compelling book, Dose. And, he makes a very strong argument in an interactive talk he delivered with our group on we're trying to escape dopamine land. And of course, dopamine is this incredibly important chemical that was designed that when we find something that we enjoy, it reinforces that. So it gives us this reward high. And, all modern day inventions are hijacking that dopamine pathway to make us, constantly crave refined carbohydrate, constantly crave, these ultra processed foods, constantly crave screen time, constantly crave short forms of instant pleasure, because that's something we just never expected to encounter 10,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So people can't beat themselves up because the environment is trying to make you gain weight. The environment is trying to drive you into choices that are naturally leaning to pleasure, sedentary behaviors. And then we have the environment also now classifying as what we call anxiogenic. So it's obesogenic. Yeah. Now it's anxiety generating, anxiogenic, because it's perpetual attention economy fighting. Right? Everyone wants you and me hooked in. Every app wants to own you and wants you in there 3 times a day. We want, every 24-hour news is going to finish with, the new update coming in half an hour. The idea of really most businesses run by having you captive to their content. Yeah. And the more you click on that content, the more they get paid by their advertisers. And it's not conspiracy theory, it's just a market economy. It's just the way it works. But no one gave us an understanding that this perpetual craving of our attention would have a catastrophic impact on our ability to disengage, switch off, and sleep.
Yeah.
So you take your average person, they're like, why am I not doing all the exercise and eating that food? It's because everything around you is offering you a more pleasure-based choice that is hardwired into your DNA to choose, because our body seeks that line of efficiency. So there's several issues. There's a health literacy play, which is we weren't taught about what the rules are of the new world. And we certainly weren't taught the basics in school, let alone now what is required. We have a $10 trillion wellness industry by 2030, which has mostly confused people buying trinkets on the hope and belief it will change the entire way they feel when it won't touch the sides. Yeah. Right? And the wellness industry has got extremely big for the lack of any impact on health and well-being outcomes as far as we can really tell. So people are lost in the literacy. The path of most success is the one where there's friction and discomfort. It's the going to bed on time. It's the making your own food. It's the getting off the bus 2 stops early. It's the thing that your body doesn't want to do because it hasn't necessarily got the energy to access it. And, ultimately people don't always believe in the impact of the behavior in terms of it going to be enough to change everything. It's like, okay, I need to eat fruit and veg, but I'm so tired. I'm so knackered. Having 1 portion of carrots isn't going to drag me out of that. And we look for this idea of self-efficacy, which is I believe that the thing I'm doing will change the way I feel. And that's where data can help. But people have got a very low belief that the thing they're doing is going to make an impact. So in many cases, they don't have the not the willpower, they don't have the infrastructure to bed it into behaviors long enough for it to make an impact. And the horror as well is it's not one thing, right? So you take your average person, they're probably doing 20 things that are all robbing them of 5% of the feeling they want. So if I get you onto vitamin D and you've got low vitamin D, it might add 5%. If I get you doing from 6,000 steps to 10,000 steps, it might get you 5%. If I get you go to bed 20 minutes earlier, it might give you 5%. Yeah. And every one of those things is going to tell you it's going to give you 100%, but it gives you 5%. And therefore people expect revelatory, transformative impact from single behaviors, and it doesn't happen.
No.
And the fitness sector tells the one fitness move is going to transform you. Nutrition says it's my nutrient. Sleep says wear my mask. They all don't understand they're part of an orchestra, and tuning their instrument by 5% helps if we all tune it by 5%, but not if only they tune it by 5%. So these conflicting things of a really challenging environment, low health literacy, low belief in the impact of behaviors to keep them long enough to change me, and not seeing my body in a holistic fashion are part of the problem before we dominate the whole. So it ain't easy, but I always go back to this when someone's saying, Ollie, I've worked 2 jobs and I've got 5 kids. I empathize enormously with that, but I do have to remind people your body doesn't care, right? Your body doesn't know how noble you are, what value. It knows what it gets and what it doesn't get, and it only holds you accountable to that. Your excuse to me doesn't need to be, I never judge a single person. Your body won't buy your excuse.
Yeah.
And that's the cold reality, that there'd be many circumstances. It's a bit like the law. Not knowing the law is not an excuse for breaking it, right?
Yeah.
Not knowing the rules of the game does not excuse your physiology from the repercussions of not playing the game. So the role is, in some cases, that's a deeply nurturing role. Others, it's a more punitive role. And others, it's a more stewardship role. And I don't work individually with clients anymore, but the principle there is we've all got excuses and they're all valid because the world is turned against well-being. Yeah. But the long, sort of a long and short of it is your body doesn't care. And when I've sat in rooms with people where they've had a complex diagnosis, as in suddenly we have a cancer, suddenly we've had a cardiovascular, then they care enough to change everything.
It's like the leverage it needs to push them into doing the right thing.
Sadly, and that again comes back to that belief system. Now I've seen the problem. I believe in the interventions, and I spent most of my life trying to convince people. I was trying to be the heart attack. I was trying to be the diagnosis, to say, how do we shift these behaviors that are changing your body in this way before a road to Damascus, big challenging moment that we both are trying to avoid, but me more so than you, perhaps.
The Jolly Soul podcast is a place to make your soul feel good, and we want to bring you the best possible content. The way to help us do that is by clicking the subscribe button. It's our intention to bring you the best possible content to help improve your life and find your jolly soul. Just click the subscribe button and follow along for more. Do you think people can hear the voice? Like almost that you're saying that your body will hold you accountable, but yet your body's allowing you to continue doing the wrong things, like somewhere in there it's allowing it, but then it's holding you accountable. What's happening there, and how do we stop that then in your mind? Is it your mind? Is it the feeling? Do you know what I mean? Like
I do. It's noisy though, Katie. It's noisy. When you go to any sort of, we've seen an awful lot of Eastern philosophies transfer into sort of westernized medicine, like meditation, like breath work. But you'll find in those methodologies often this idea of a body scan, which is, okay, when was the last time you really wiggled your toes and felt it? When was the last time you really looked at your feet closely? Yeah. When was the last time you noticed how tight your calves are? When was the last time you looked over after you've done a poo and looked at the quality of the poo or the color of your urine? Or you really noticed, whether your gums were pushing back? And, the world is all consuming, and it's very easy to go days, weeks, months, years without noticing that your body is shifting in a way that you didn't particularly notice, or your peers around you are all shifting in that same direction. But The Body Keeps the Score was a famous book that looked at really the idea that both traumas and behaviors will manifest into what people traditionally believe is modern disease. Modern disease is there's many factors. You can never say why any disease happens to anybody. But we've got to get to that there's a centralized aspect of most people have disconnected from themselves. And it's very easy for me to go into a super stimulating day in a traditional workplace, come home to hyper engaging content with hyper processed food, pass out, and not taking a single second to notice Ollie Patrick in that day.
Yeah.
Not just myself, but also, am I leading a day close to my values? Am I nurturing the relationships that I should be nurturing? Did I hydrate today? Did I drink? And so we've seen wearables actually play a really interesting role in helping people sort of notice that. So how many people put a Whoop on, this sort of traditional wearable that looks, and they notice that when they drink alcohol, they don't sleep very well. And they're like, I never noticed that. It's like, how could you not notice it? Now you wear that device.
Yeah. Anybody
wearing a Whoop will go, oh God, I feel awful on alcohol, because they notice it.
So I know what a wearable is and a Whoop, but so just to explain what that is for people.
Yeah, good question. So wearables have boomed in lots of different directions, and there's no such thing as really a wearable. Some wearables measure blood glucose, others measure how many steps you do. So wearable by proxy is something you put on your body and it continually tracks something. Yeah. Whoop is one of a number of wearables that track this parameter called heart rate variability, which is really a way of looking inside the human being and looking at a nervous system called the autonomic nervous system. Now, without turning this into the worst podcast you've ever been on, you'll never invite me back for this. But principally,
this important information. Like, people just don't know, though. That's the thing. You want to know.
They don't.
They
don't. And this nervous system is you, right? So as you and I sit there now, our insides of our body are changing all the time. So your heart rate's going up and down. Your blood pressure is going up and down. Mm-hmm. Levels of sugar in your bloodstream are going up and down. Your tummy is releasing enzymes that break down food and acid, and then it isn't. Blood's moving to your muscles, to your skin. It's moving on. All this stuff's going on all the time, but without you going, increase blood pressure, decrease. You're not doing it unconscious thoughts. Yeah. Okay. So the autonomic nervous system basically runs the inside of you to match the demands of the outside world. If it's hot in my room here, I'll sweat. If food comes in, I'll salivate. Yeah. And these devices, interesting, are measuring that nervous system to look at how often it believes you are in a period of being ready for threat and stress, and how often your body is in a period of being ready for digestion, energy recuperation, and rest. And I've oversimplified that to the point of being wrong, but in principle. So in essence, people are wearing a wearable that's tracking how stressed they are and how rested they are. And in many cases, lots of our rest comes through the presence of sleep. So what someone's able to do with this wearable, a Whoop, for example, wear it on the wrist, as they drink alcohol, they would see on their wearable that their sleep score has gone down massively, but they would also notice that their recovery score, which is this idea of, did I recharge my battery today, would also be compromised. Now, that doesn't tell you how you feel, but it gives you the chance to ask yourself a better question about how I feel. And that wearable is how people are almost saying, I'm going to reconnect with my body because I hadn't noticed that I've done no steps today. Okay. It's telling me. Hadn't noticed that I've spent all day stressed and didn't spend a single second chilling. Yeah. It tells me. I didn't notice that I went to bed an hour and a half later than normal and my sleep was only a third of the quality because I had 2 glasses of wine. Didn't notice that. It doesn't know that 2 glasses of wine was with a great friend and I topped up my social battery. So we still have no single wearable that tells me actually how I am. Yeah. But these wearables have boomed to billion-dollar industries because people are so disconnected with how they feel. They need this third-party intelligent algorithm to act like a little coach on your shoulder and go, maybe don't push yourself too hard today. Or conversely, you are full tank, let rip. Don't know if you feel a bit tired mid-afternoon, it's a full scod. Cut loose.
And is that where the data's at? Is that what kind of information it gives you? So it is it's giving you that type of information through an app. It says this is okay.
Yeah. So you get the general. Most of these are trying to quantify health in 3 different ways. They'll call load your combination of physical activity, exercise, and stress. because they all go in the same pot. Right? So
Yeah.
if I have a really, really intense day and do loads of steps and then train in the evening, I'm very at high risk of being exhausted, burnt out if I do that too often.
Yeah.
So psychological stress, if you and I had an argument for an hour and a half now, goes into a very similar physical pot as you and I going for a slow run now. It's all load. So we got a load score out of 100. We have a recovery score out of 100, which is, did I have that nervous system inside me believing that I was chill and restoring energy? Literally, as a human being, we must recharge our battery, and it measures that. And my sleep, did it do what sleep should do? Did it get the 7 to 9 hours? And in those stages, did I get my requisite deep or slow wave sleep and my rapid eye movement sleep? And then I get a dashboard of me that goes, okay, Ollie, today you were thinking about doing this. Do I use that dashboard to change my decision making? I've got more. Yesterday was low load and high sleep, so I can be really busy today and push. Or I've had 3 days in a row where I've overwhelmed myself with load, poor sleep, poor recovery. If I do that again on a fourth day, is that when I start to get that chest infection?
Yeah. Okay.
And it's alongside this data trying to capture my subjective appraisal of myself. So I'm filling in a diary that goes, I am tired, I'm fresh, I'm feeling this. And what it's learning really is it's building an AI database of me. So I'd be able to go, do you know what? I've got the biggest day of my career next Thursday. Get me ready for it. And it would say, right, you need to go to bed tonight at 10:30. Call your mate Hamish, because whenever you speak to him, you go into a state of calm. Don't watch Stranger Things on Netflix. And of course, these data points are growing. But in 2 years' time, it will be able to predict me based on learning me.
Wow,
some people might say that's terrifying and I don't want that. But, we are leveraging, in my opinion, a really intelligent technology to hyper-personalize the dosage, which says, I don't have to do everything. I just have to do this one thing. And that's what we're all after.
We're already subconsciously walking around doing many things to ourselves that we shouldn't be doing. We almost need a little helping hand, it seems, to just say, actually, maybe not, maybe this, maybe that, just to give us that helping hand more than it being not a good thing. I
Agree.
think yeah.
Well, but that's the great point there, Katie, because if you believe it's telling you what to do, it can be a judgy friend. If and it's constantly telling you, oh, you terrible sleeper, and you're not moving enough, and it's like, okay, I know those things. It's not doing that. It's saying, here is information to make a decision from, and it'll be my decision to be made. And the big backlash against wearables is they're telling me off all the time, or it doesn't make any sense. There is a degree of literacy that says I must understand that every day I must recharge my battery, I must sleep adequately, and I must move and combine that movement with stress. And if you aren't warmed to those concepts, then it doesn't matter. Your body is experiencing all three of those every day, whether you're aware of it or not. And to me, I'm pro these. When people ask themselves the question, how do I make sure I'm getting the right dosage of the right things to function to my best of ability? And my great argument here is I'm committed to do the least amount of everything possible, right? I'm not your traditional well-being expert that takes the top off on Instagram and says, this is how you can achieve what I've achieved. That would lose me followers, I promise you. Not that I've got enough to lose. Right. I'm not like, oh, this is Ollie's methodology. I'm like, there is no methodology. There's iterative self-care. And to be iterative, to be learning and reflecting, data helps with that enormously. And I think that data helps me determine I don't need to go to the gym today. And I don't have to go to bed as early tonight. And I can smash through another caffeinated drink mid-afternoon. And I use it as a way of enabling me to do the behaviors that I really want to do, but might feel guilty to do otherwise. Yeah. And so I do the least amount of cardio, least weights, least food prep I possibly can, because my life isn't to be well. I want my life to be my life. I want wellness to enable me to lead my life. And I think a lot of people in my sector have made wellness the goal. Wellness isn't the goal. The goal is the goal. Being a good dad is my goal.
And
being
having a good life.
Good friend. Having a great life.
Having a good, that's what for me, my life goal is that, just having a happy soul, genuinely, just a jolly soul.
Jolly, that's why jolly. I love the concept here.
Yeah,
that's missing for so many people. As an incentive or a goal. It's like, and you and I will probably both know how many people said, I'll be happy when. It's like, actually, seeking a jolly soul, seeking contentment and joyfulness is the goal. Well-being, I think, can really help you get there. But
And that
well-being
can be
itself isn't the goal.
for other people as well. You know, like when you think about people, when you were saying just like meal prep there, I just thought just doing like endless amounts of meal prep. For me, that doesn't make, but other people that might make them happy and that makes them feel good. And that's also okay. But the wearables are really interesting. I was thinking about how, when we talk about stress, then is there a good amount of stress, or is stress as something that we should avoid as much as possible?
Great question. We should never avoid stress. Really, stress is the elixir of human existence. You know, a stress-less existence is awful. It really is awful. And yeah, everyone's going to be going, no, get rid of this guy, bin him. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. It's like, well, you call me 4 weeks into your holiday and you tell me you're not twitching to come back and do something. People say, no way. You tell me why retiring is classified as a health risk.
Yeah.
We aren't designed to do nothing. And stress, of course, we've got to frame it, right? And let's use the word pressure. Pressure has a very clear relationship with performance and health. That too little pressure has a deleterious negative effect on performance and health. So if I take away all the things you need to do today, tomorrow, forever, I take away any sense of accountability or responsibility, because they're all pressures, right? They're all stressors. If I take away everything that you are needed for and just mean you're a pleasure-seeking machine, fairly quickly you will be in a spiral of negative behaviors, and your biggest first health, signal will be psychological well-being, most notably in potential anxiety, depressive state, etc. Because we need pressure, we need a reason. Yeah. We need a reason to exist.
Yeah.
There's no reason for me to exist. Purpose, right? So pressure, stress, and purpose are all, they're not the same thing, but they're intertwined. Right. So we have a very clear dose relationship that too little pressure, no performance, no health. And then as pressure rises, so does performance. And so as you ask more of me, I'm able to deliver more. And this is that same idea in sport, that a world record won't be broken at the practice track. As the pressure is greatest at a 4-year Olympic Games, we'll see the most world records because the performance is greatest. So when does pressure turn bad? It's a crucial point when it overwhelms us. Right? And that's not a set point. So stress is good until there's too much of it. And there's not too much objectively, that's too much subjectively. So when pressure overwhelms my ability to cope, we end up with the definition of what most people call stress, which is I'm not bothered about stress or pressure. I'm worried about the one that's too many. Right. Yeah. So yesterday, a really busy day, and loads going on, was racing back a podcast that I was hosting, had a big international guest on it, and the times had changed their end, and it had come an hour forwards. They're ringing me while they're in the car saying, this global, founder is waiting for you in the lobby, and I'm on the A404 going, bloody hell. And then my tire blew up.
Oh, right? No.
Right. And then I get back and my wife's like, okay, someone's got to go get our daughter from the station. And I'm like, I can't do that. Right. Now that moment, that behavior wasn't that was a problem. It was the last one. Right. Yeah. And so lots of people think stress is the big bereavement, divorce, house move. What we've got is we are encountering so many pressures daily that we sometimes overwhelm our ability to cope, not through them being too big, but being too many. Yeah. And it's the last one that we might determine as stressful, but it's built on the back of the other 72 that have already happened that day. Yeah. And really we have this curve, and actually it's called the Yerkes-Dodson inverted U hypothesis of pressure performance. And it goes, our body rises its performance under pressure until pressures overwhelm us, and then we see a drop in performance. And if those pressures continue to overwhelm us, we see a catastrophic impact on health. Right. And I say health, not mindset health. So we've known from the 1930s that if you overwhelm a biological creature, in that case rats, on a prolonged basis, it gets stomach ulcers, its thyroid gland in its neck wastes away, it develops actual medical illness. So when pressure overwhelms us for too long, we become physically unwell, not psychologically unwell. And so we're in this constant lifelong battle of, can I control the number of pressures I encounter so they're not too little, nor are they too many? Can I create an infrastructure where I can share those pressures by just speaking about them? Can I create an environment by which I perceive less stressors? That's a really important one, right? So
perceive is a really good point. Yeah. Because sometimes you just can't get out of problems or situations.
You can't.
So you can think about these things differently, and that will reduce the stress of it. Is that right?
100%. And actually, there's only 3 stresses. There's heat, noise, and load, right? That's really difficult. It's an important thing to hear, but difficult to understand. Heat, noise, and load are the only 3 things that if you and I encounter them, our bodies will react the same way. Everything else that we encounter will be based on our perception of that information. So if you, fear of flying is always a good one.
Yeah.
Fear of flying creates a really big stressful occurrence for lots of people. So you're on a plane, someone's got a fear of flying and the person next to them doesn't. You're both on an aeroplane. The event is the same. You're going to the same destination, probably both going to a holiday destination. So why is one person having a stress reaction? Because they've created 1,000 things that don't exist that their body's reacting for. And most notably, they believe the plane's going to crash. So that nervous system I spoke about earlier, the autonomic nervous system, gets ready for a plane crash that never happens. And Winston Churchill, one of his many quotes was, "I know the story of a man who would have had a wonderful life were it not for all the stressful things that never happened to him." And what we get here is most pressures that we create are not true. They are. So if I'm late on that call, I'm like, well, I won't get the next call with that senior business person, and then I'll let down the other people from the podcast, and that means we'll lose members, and that means we'll lose revenue. And suddenly the event has turned into 10 different stresses, none of which exist. The times got mixed up. That happens. Daytime saving in Pacific Standard Time is what it is, right? So when we look at stress, we've got to go, how many stresses are real versus manufactured perceptive events of the future? And that's again why you'll see for stress techniques like meditation and mindfulness and breath work rising significantly, because they are anchored in the fact that I am in the moment I'm in, not in the future moment where there's 10 more stresses that aren't true.
I think as well, for me, it separates my thoughts. I'm more not in control of my thoughts. I'm aware of my thoughts more.
Lovely.
That's
lovely
when
point.
you step back with meditation. I think that's been, key to, that's what I took from it anyway, that I was able to hear a thought and be like, oh, no, thanks very much. I've got that, but I don't like that. So let's just let that one go. And I think that's a way to really, in the moment of stress and overwhelm and all the things laying on top, to sort of separate from it, isn't it? Well, it
Absolutely
has been
superb.
for me. I don't know.
That's a great example. Which style of meditation is it? Is it sort of a bit of being still, breath work? Yeah,
I mean,
fabulous.
When I first ever learned that valuable lesson for me, I honestly was only doing 2 minutes every day. I set a timer, 2 minutes, close my eyes, and I did it for 2 weeks. And then I was like, oh, I heard a thought there that was not my thought. It wasn't my personal opinion, and I didn't like it. And I was like, oh, that's really odd. It feels like, how's that possible? It came from me.
Yeah.
And it was in my head, but I don't agree with it. And and so that was just such a valuable lesson. I thought, gosh, I hope so many people hear that, and just know about meditation and the value of it. So
I think that's a perfect example. It is that case of catching negative automated thoughts, catching, the idea that is that true? Would I say that to someone else? Would I say, you prat, you idiot to my son? So speaking to ourselves with the tone of voice we speak to others, catching things that are simply not true.
Yeah.
And in many cases, sharing those thoughts. That's why still, on a stress point of view, a good conversation goes a long way, because when you speak things into truth, you realize they're madness, they're nonsense. But in your mind, they're very real, and your body's reacting to the mind. Your body gets ready for what it believes is your truth. That's, again, really important. My body doesn't get ready for what's actually going to happen when I step out the door. If I believe when I leave this room, I'm going to run a 100-meter race, my heart rate will go up, my blood pressure will go up, my glucose will release into my bloodstream, because I'm ready for an event before it happens. If I believe that's an awful meeting, I'll be ready in the same way. If I believe when I walk out this door, it's going to be a great friend, we're going to have a cup of coffee together, we're going to sit and talk, I'll get ready for that as well. Yeah. So the way we perceive what's not only happening but about to happen will be the major determinant of what my body's ready for and how stressed I feel. And then we've also got the last layer. So can I control how many stresses I've got? Can I share them? Can I perceive less? But also, can I react to them less? And that's where things, again, like meditation, breath work, but also, before we started this call, we were talking about blossom season.
Yeah.
And, biophilia, being in nature, immediately down-regulates the stress response. So, if you're having an absolute shocker of a day and everything is going wrong, when you go in nature, you'll automatically physiologically calm down. because the very nature of nature tells you you're safe, because you can escape in 1,000 different directions. The patterns we encounter, the colors, are hardwired into our brain to drive a calming response.
Peace.
In the same way as, genuine physiological, psychological peace. So, when we end up with, I'm too stressed, it's like, well, can I turn off the 24-hour news, shut down social media? Can I call that great friend of mine? Can I catch negative thoughts and maybe journal? So I'm writing things down. And can I go for a walk every day in nature? And then does that same load of stressful events really affect me the same on the Tuesday that I've done all that compared to the Monday when I didn't? And the answer is, unless you are a completely extreme outlier, you will feel markedly less stressed by the same life 2 days later than the days you weren't doing those things.
And even then, though, even if you are doing all of the things and you are taking time out, sometimes it just gets you, don't you think? Like sometimes
it has to get you. Sometimes it is too much.
Yeah,
but we're designed for
normal.
it, Katie, as well.
That's normal.
Totally normal.
Yeah,
and we shouldn't. We grow through hyper stress. So when too many stresses overwhelm us, those are the periods where we grow.
Yeah,
that's really important.
Scientifically proven, because I 100% believe that. Everything that I've gone through, I think, I didn't want to go through that, but still the lessons that come, you think, wow, that I really have got a lesson from that, So
absolutely, and proven on every level. The human body adapts when it is given something it can't do, and it goes away from that and says, well, then how would I be able to do it in the future? Everyone who's ever done anything in their career would have taken a job that they felt was too big for them.
Yeah.
Or they fundraised for something they couldn't do, and they realized that they can do it. And there's lots of different psychological principles in this. And again, I'm a physiologist, not a psychologist, but lots of my closest colleagues are people working in this space of perception and mindset. And a good friend of mine, Dr. Vanessa Moulton, has a model of psychological fitness. And she will, again, pull on the work of another, not name dropping everybody, Angela Duckworth, who wrote the book Grit. Right? And grit is my ability to persevere to a long-term goal of passion. And ultimately, grit, how gritty you are, will be the single best determinant of whether you are successful. And just on a simple basis, who succeeds? The people who don't quit.
Yeah.
So my ability to grit it out. And so we're seeing grit as a principle, as the biggest determinant of stress management and success. Why? If I go through hard times, hard times make hard people, which means that everything else is less hard by comparison. Like if you've hardened your souls on the coals of fire, then the beach is easy living.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If you've never done anything tough, then you will have that soft belly that is unfortunately more vulnerable to more stress reactions. So hard times create psychological reserve. They create, develop grit, develop these capabilities of resilience. They also build, again, fortitude fundamentally. That means when the next thing comes along, you've got a better toolkit. You've got a grittier ecosystem to manage it. So that's unequivocally true. And we shouldn't, we are all going to face challenges of life. It's not to avoid them. It's to manage them to the best if we can while we're in it, and then grow and learn from them. So the next thing that comes along, we're a better version of ourselves. And that's a lifelong journey. Yeah,
that's beautiful. I mean, that's the truth as well. Like how everyone deals with different situations. I always find that really intriguing. When there is sort of a maybe if it is, a serious situation, and seeing, 5 people deal with that same situation, it's quite amazing, really. Some people get angry, some people are hurt, some people, and it's just, I find it such an interesting one. And is that then just our own personal experience and growth? Is it just that? And I suppose
hugely molded by that, but also molded by the environment we've been in, and whether we are, naturally an optimist or a pessimist, and both can have success. I mean, there was a business leader, I can't remember who it was, I think being interviewed on Jake Humphrey's podcast, the Room Where It Happened, which I'm a big fan of. And they were, someone walked into the room and said, I've got bad news. And it's like, you haven't got bad news. You've just got news, right? You have news. Yeah. And, we haven't made a sale this quarter. Okay, it's news. We will now adapt to that news. But that's really important framing. Yeah. As in, there is no bad news or good news. If we attach a deliberate emotion to things, it's how do I process this and use its information most effectively? And in amongst all these techniques is that, again, ability to be mindful. The moment I'm in is the moment I'm in, And we call our modern environment mindlessness. It's sort of, I can be literally get to work and not know how I've got to work. I can do a whole day's work, not know who I've spoken to, watch a TV program I can't remember. And it's like, Gordon Bennett, that can be default for most people. So mindfulness is that I am very lucky to be alive. I'm very fortunate that all these things have transpired, that I'm able to be at this stage of life in this particular space. Can I be in the moment I'm in and then see all the positive things there are to embrace from that, and face challenges with that same degree of calm that sort of, that hopefully distills into my personal relationships and other. But, that is the work of psychology to really say, can I reframe the way I view the world to make me a person more aligned with who I want to be? And some people thrive in the fires, some people thrive in the crisis, and they live for that and wouldn't want to change that trait. I gravitate naturally to people who resonate a calm frequency. And I remember there was an old TV advert, wasn't there? We don't make a crisis out of a drama. No, we don't make a drama out of a crisis. TV, There's a lot of people who make a crisis out of a drama, and very few of them exist. And when you ring me up and go, have you seen that the Iran telecom station has been, I'm like, in what way, shape or form does that affect you directly today? Are you able to influence it directly today? And do you want to distill that onto other people? And people who constantly radiate the challenges of the world as if they are solving them themselves to the detriment of others are the sort of person that when you are full to the brim with all your real pressures, you need to cut those people off and try and avoid being one of those people.
Yeah, there's so much of that. Oh my gosh, that opens so much. But it disempowers you, I think, even just so much of the news where you can't do anything about it. I find that it can really feel very heavy. And people and energy. And obviously that's the name of your podcast, The Energy Equation. So just to sort of coming to an end, I don't want to not discuss that because energy is so important. And that, I do feel like, if somebody walks in the room with a bad energy though, I do genuinely feel it, like if they're angry or frustrated or, so that to me is, energy is so important. And obviously you have a podcast, which is called The Energy Equation. When you talk about energy, what are you talking about? When it comes to The Energy Equation, the podcast, what is it that you're referring to? What type of energy?
All of them, ultimately. I mean, as a physiologist, more of our physical energy, but also being acutely aware that on a very basic level, you and I will have a physical energy, how knackered we are, how dependent we are on sugars and caffeines and, adrenalizing behaviors. But also we have a deep emotional energy, which is that resonance you're talking about. I walk in the room and I'm lift you up, or I walk in the room and drag you down. That's not about whether we both slept well last night. It's what kind of a frequency I'm putting out into the world. And I mean that in more of a sort of emotional connected sense. We also have a mental energy, which is how engaged am I in this conversation and the growth, and you're building projects and businesses, and am I learning something, learning the piano, I'm learning Spanish, or am I a very dormant, static mind, just doom scrolling through dopamine reward social media? So you can have two very different people sat in the same room, one learning and growing, one shrinking and what we call atrophying. And then you've got your sort of spiritual energy, which is, do I feel like I'm contributing? Am I, we mentioned on purpose earlier, purpose, the sense that I contribute and some sense of someone notices or affirms me for that contribution. So if I turn up on a Saturday and volunteer at a park run, this national scheme, that's spiritual energy, isn't it? Because all those people needed me to be there and they got to do that thing because I did my thing. And that makes me enormously uplifted, which wouldn't necessarily be that I slept better the night before or the night of. So I'm interested in how people perceive their energy. And the reason being, if I think of doing a health assessment on someone, the idea of being healthy is a very amorphous, shapeless goal. I want to be healthy. Right. What do you mean? Like, do you mean I don't want early disease when I'm 80? Or do you mean I need less sore knees? If someone says I want to be healthy, like, it doesn't mean anything. It's like, I want to be fit. Fit for what? Right? Fit to look, fit to climb a mountain, fit to get out of your chair. Fit is task specific. Healthy is even worse. It's like, so these words that we use need a deeper dive. And what I normally like to ask someone is, okay, out of 100, with 100 being all the energy you could wish for, however you frame it, and one being just none, what's your average energy been over the last 6 weeks? And I don't mind if that person's really talking about their emotional, their physical, their spiritual. I'm interested in how an individual perceives their energy And then I'm interested in what they believe gives that number. It's, why, if I say 65, why it isn't 60, and what would it take to get it to 70. And I use it, the program has a mix of medical and subject matter experts and celebrities who wear devices. So I test some of them with wearable devices that look at their sleep, their fitness, their stress levels. And I increasingly have measured the DNA of a number of people in this last series to look at what their genetics told them they were going to be good at and not good at. So it's a weird mix of a clinical consultation, an energy dive, and then subject matter experts. So
when you say what your DNA thinks you're good at, what kind of results do you get from DNA? What kind of things question. might you find out?
Yeah, so originally we thought we'd look at DNA to say, have you got the gene for breast cancer or have you got the gene for Alzheimer's? And we realized actually that those are what we call polygenic. There's so many different things affecting that likelihood that it's remiss almost to tell someone they've got a bigger risk or not. So genes were originally used, or genome testing, to see disease forecasting. We don't do that anymore. But what we can say is we know that certain genes do certain jobs in the body. And if that job is a gene can work really well, or you can look at a gene and go, oh, it's not working well at all. There's gaps between that. Let's imagine, on a simple basis, there's a gene that helps your body clear down some of the neurotransmitters in your brain around stress. It's called the COMT gene. So when someone's got a really effective version of that gene, they will get rid of noradrenaline and adrenaline really quickly, which means they might have a higher appetite for risk taking, and they might be able to go into a last minute presentation and just nail it because they gobble up stress.
Yeah.
The version of that person who doesn't break those things down might be more fearful of noradrenaline, and they might do everything they can to avoid conflict, or they would be the person who rehearsed their talk 22 times before they went on stage, so they are in control of the controllables. They both end up doing the talk. And we call that person called the strategist mindset. The other person is called the warrior mindset. And that's determined by which gene you've got. So what we can do when we've got your gene analysis is start to look at behavioral traits that you might lean into or lean away from based on whether the individual's happy or not happy with how they're expressing. So what you don't do is go, Katie, you've got this dodgy gene and you must now never, do an unprepared presentation. We just don't know. We've got this gene information. We've got this extraordinary lifestyle. We've got the unknown unknowns.
But
for me,
if I knew that though about myself, then I would. If I was worrying all the time, it's kind of in you.
Yes.
You understand, so that I need to prepare more. I need to allocate more time. Whereas the other person is kind of like, oh, I can just go in there and nail it. I'm good.
Exactly. And they may fall foul that they never then plan, and they might, so they would have to work harder at saying, okay, you're too last minute. I've got to plan that holiday 3 months in advance because everyone around me has got the strategy gene. I keep pissing them off because I keep turning up last minute. So it's about understand. It's not that you have to change anything, but I think understanding gives you the tool to control things that you might have felt were outside of your control. And to me, again, my only ambition, whether I do a talk for a corporate or an individual podcast, is that the individual I'm encountering has got the tool to move their energy number up. And they will hear something that could do that for them, whether they choose to do it or whether it's the right time to do it. I will provide them with something that would move their energy up based on that consultation or that talk. And to me, it's not about that they have to, it's theirs if they want to. Everyone's health is their choice, their energy is their choice. I just think there's a low health literacy / understanding of this stuff. And there's too many people selling you trinkets and single point solutions. And I'm trying to be a nuanced, balanced voice in the sort of the madness.
Would someone need to come to yourself then to have that kind of test? A DNA?
They would, I mean, you'd need to go to a functional medicine clinic or a functional nutritionist. But I don't test anyone anymore. So, because when you've done all the testing, if you've done the world's most advanced health assessment, if I do that one test on you, outside of a podcast entertainment format, Katie, I'm a bit like, well, what are all the things I don't know? And so I'm sort of beholden to the things I don't know. And I decided not to do any clinical work when I left that sort of advanced medical clinic in 2021. So now I do strategic advisory to companies and podcasting. And my teachers at the school parents evening said, "Oh, you're Mary's dad. You're a podcaster, aren't you?" I was like, "Not entirely. It's a part.
It's like a part of what I do.
It's a part of it. Well, we both love to claim it as our main role, but it's it's a confused time because this
Yeah.
environment's so challenging. People don't know what to do. The wellness industry is selling you things over here. And I think, 1 in 8 of us are tired all the time, according to YouGov.
Yeah.
1 in 4 on top of that is tired most of the time. And most people don't have the energy they expect to have. And I think energy as a vehicle to health is a really, that's where I feel I can add the most value. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Should it be that at all ages, like if you're 80, would your level of energy be reduced, or can it be 100, like the same as a 20-year-old? Is there a difference? Should there be a difference or not?
There will be, because we are born with a finite lifespan, because we effectively, as an organism, we're made up of trillions of cells that have the ability, once they're damaged or have run through, to clone themselves again.
Yeah.
So a skin cell is a good example. A skin cell can, once it's had that damage from too much UV, UVA, UVB, and other things, it will start to die, and then it clones itself. But there's different cells have different volumes, but your general cell can only clone itself 39 times. So your 80-year-old is a sort of someone actually, I was doing a talk the other day, someone said, isn't this like Chinese whispers? I was like, oh, it is like Chinese whispers. Like the original cell has sort of whispered through these lenses, and the end message is not as cohesive as the original. So there's a lack of cellular resilience and capability in the 80-year-old version. We can retain loads of biological capability. Again, if you take an 80-year-old female who's got no estrogen, no progesterone, no testosterone, low muscle mass, low cardiorespiratory fitness, more weathering, they of course can't deliver the performance of the 40-year-old version of themselves. Some of those things can be massively reduced in terms of, they could still be really cardiovascularly fit. They could be really muscly, or, appropriately. They could be really learning new things and learning new skills and building what we call, neuroplasticity, these new brain connections. The body will be able to do what it believes it's still required to do. And if you tell me my requisite is no movement, no thinking, no chewing, I will reset to that baseline. If in aging you want higher capability, you need to inform the cells of your body daily that they are demanded upon and they are required. And that is the longevity strategy. And really the latest biologically you'd want to start thinking about that is age 35. And when's the best time to start your longevity approach is early 30s.
Yeah.
When is the second best time? Today.
Yeah.
And that, that older version of you is watching you now and saying, did you put strain and load and effort into these cells, or did you let me wither on the vine? And if it is the latter, there'll be a cost, sadly.
I think I love the Blue Zone show on Netflix, which I have heard you talk about actually as well. So there's so many things in that, isn't there, of like community and connection and all the things that we've been talking about today actually, and keeping the brain active. Those people that are over 100 that are riding horses, and it's just actually phenomenal. But it kind of it shows not to sort of slow down and to keep using everything really. Everything. It's almost in our mind where we say, we need to, you retire, you slow down, and and it seems like then that is telling the body, and it then creates that somehow. So it's just kind of, I guess the key to longevity is just to keep using everything and although it will slow down, you can keep a relatively good life and
without
have
a doubt,
a healthy life.
And that's perfectly described. And it comes back to, the key to longevity is also not getting a complex disease, which ties back into the health screening and the health management bit. But I think, in principle, the key there is, if you are still required on every level, if my muscle's still required, if my heart's still required, if me as a person still required. And, one commonality through Blue Zones is attitude to aging, as in people feel looking forward to aging and becoming the sage, and the respect and reverence of aging. And of course, in the UK, you get 65, you're thrown out the workplace, and at 75, you're thrown in a care home. It doesn't look great to age. Not many people are looking forward to it. But when you really look into what's the opportunity of aging, to pass on that wisdom. And we're seeing generations shrink, it's getting shorter and shorter, the time between generations, because we've got these digital natives and, Gen Alphas speaking a different language to Gen Zs, to millennials, to Gen X. It's wild.
Yeah.
But we must, if we want proper aging, we must reframe the inclusion and reverence of aged individuals in society, particularly in the UK, for me.
But
Because
you know
if they're
yourself, what you've learned in your life now, if you'd have known that when you were 10, as an
oh,
example, you just see your life may have been completely different. It could have changed many things. And you just think, well, if I've got that wisdom in my own self, then someone who's 80 is going to, we just have to reframe the thinking of it, really, don't we? And think, well, they've got these life lessons that are so valuable. I'm always kind of saying to my children, so I've kind of got this idea. So, but if you want to go with that, you go with it. But if you don't, I'm just going to lay it out there. And then what I've learned.
Wisdom.
Take it if you want and just, but I don't force. I think it's really important that they learn as much as they can. But if I know something, I'm trying to go, let me give you a helping hand. I didn't know this when I was your age.
Be.
So,
Has to be. That's, that sort of campfire ideology of, the elder around the campfire telling the stories to the young. That is the way it's always been. We just have this new world that their equivalent of that is a Google search. But that doesn't mean that the human aspect of those stories should be lost. And again, people are looking at how we capture that aging storytelling and preserve it for future generations. But at the moment, we have an attitude to aging problem that would be as prevalent as any of the sort of physical stuff that we can improve.
Yeah. Well, oh my goodness, I literally have about 18 pages here that I've not gone through. I'm going to just start to wrap this up. I'm going to say, as a sort of a final-ish question, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you'd like to say? Or is there anything that comes to mind about, living a happy life that you'd like people to think about? Or, just for the listeners, is there anything?
I think so when all things of well-being and to me, happiness in whichever format, we had a great debate with someone on stage, what we mean by happiness, whether it's joyfulness, whether it's contentment and all those different iterations. I think at the heart of it all is self-care. What we have to realize is well-being won't be the path of least resistance now. If you are going to do things that nourish the cells of your body, it will be effort. And therefore, to be making that effort, you must feel yourself worthy of it. Yeah. And I think a lot of people have for too long led a selfless existence, disconnected from how they feel. And those aren't easy things to correct, but an awareness of them is the first point. Am I noticing myself, and am I worthy of time, effort, and spend to lean into well-being in the belief that it will be fruitful down the line? And I have never met anyone who invested in more self-care and felt that was a worthless investment. And of course, we can go too far. We're not talking about the optimized biohacker is lost all relevance. I just think two things that sit amongst all this are just noticing yourself. How am I feeling? Do that energy audit 1 to 100. And to make the changes that move you up on that number won't be easy, but they will be worthwhile. And I believe everyone is worth that effort. But it's for the individual to believe it more than me.
Yeah, they deserve it.
They deserve it.
That's the thing. People feel like they don't deserve it, or like they haven't got time for themselves. And I think, make more time for themselves would be key.
Agree.
So if I don't know if there is any quotes. Like, we did mention a Winston Churchill quote. Has Jolly Soul's page has got lots of quotes, and I write a lot of them. Or I used to find lots of quotes, and I found them to be they'd move me in different ways and make me think differently. I think they're quite a wonderful thing. Has any quote ever affected you, or does any quote come to mind that is a daily thing or an affirmation even that you use yourself or that you could give us now?
I constantly say the older a man gets, the faster he could run as a boy. But that's my general sense of, and I say that as always as a joke when I'm playing an awful tennis shot or a football game. Like, I was much better when I was younger. But I think it's relevant, the fact we often hold ourselves to a false level of expectation. I can't be as strong as I was when I was 22, and I can't be as clever as I was 10 years ago. So I think often the benchmark that we hold ourselves accountable to is too high. The older a man gets, the faster he can run as a boy. I can't be constantly comparing myself to 22-year-old Ollie Patrick. It's not reasonable. And I think in that layer of self-compassion, I think that's a really important note to say, I just want to compare myself to me yesterday. That's a good framework. And not be beholden to, I can't get back in that wedding dress, or I can't get back in, that particular T-shirt that I've always used. Let go of who you once were, accept who you now are, and improve on that version. So
I love that.
That would be a silly quote I use when I dump a shot in the net playing, whatever racket sport.
But it
I
means
think it's
so
got
much. It
means so much.
More, yeah.
It's forgive yourself for not being who you once were and reinvent yourself from here.
Okay, so I finish with 3 big questions on life. I always do this. You may just give me one word. You don't have to give me a sentence or anything that springs to mind. No one really knows the answers generally. So it's just, we'll go for it. So what do you, I mean, this maybe slightly off, I'm not sure, but what do you think the key to success is?
Contentment.
What do you think the secret to happiness is?
Connection.
And what do you think the meaning of life is?
Contribution.
Oh, beautiful. I absolutely love that. Okay, so if you were here in person, I would ask you to take a quote from the Jolly Jar, and you're not, so I'm going to pick one.
You do it for me.
For you. Here we go. What did you get? Some days doing your best is just making it through, and that's okay.
I'll tell you what, that's pretty apt, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's about as it's enough is enough.
Exactly.
Don't see, better, not perfect is a good one. So really good. Love that quote.
Thank
Superb.
you. Oh, well, thank you. Honestly, thank you so much for today. I probably could have asked you more than 1 million questions. And I'll just email them to you.
Yeah, ping them over. Ping them over.
Okay, we'll have to meet again. We'll have to meet in person. That'd be wonderful. So thank you so much for today.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Fantastic.
Total pleasure. And again, I love the theme and the, what's trying to be achieved. And, we do want that soul to be looked at and lifted and, finding its version of happiness. And it's no one thing. It's lots of different little bits. If there's something in there that's useful, then we've both had a good day at the office. So thanks for having me on, Katie. Really appreciate it.
Honestly, people will get so much from it. Thank you so much.